Thanks. Thanks, Dr. Kreider. I'm really excited about this, guys, and hopefully this will be a really good learning experience for you. But we have a great panel put together, and you're going to see that they come from different backgrounds involved with youth and training of youth and how to expose youth to physical activity. And so what I'm going to ask to start with is just the panelists to provide some information on their backgrounds, who they are, and then really specifically to say what your current involvement with youth sports or physical activity is. So Peter, we'll start with you.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Lamont. I am Recreation Superintendent with the City of College Station, and as such, part of my duties involve overseeing our youth sports, our athletics programs, our tournament programs, as well as our coordination with other user groups, soccer, baseball, and the such, for the use of city facilities for the provision of those activities as well.
Howdy. My name is Kimmy Daly, and I represent the parents of the 12 girls, actually. I teach at the high school, A&M Consolidated, and I have had children to go through the College Station City program, and I also have 2 that are with 12 right now.
I'm Mike Hannock. I am a professor in health and kinesiology here. I've had some of you in my PEP classes. I'm also a father of 4, and so that kind of drives me into the youth sports area. I've been involved in youth sports pretty much my whole life, from 5 growing up. Originally grew up in Canada. I didn't play hockey, so played soccer, basketball, swam, did a bunch of different sports growing up, and so that obviously created an interest in my life in sports, and hopefully I'm carrying it on to my kids, but it gives me a way to be involved with my kids, to coach my kids and help them try to instill an active life into as they grow up.
My name is Kevin Hodge. I played college baseball at Rice University. I then went on and played 9 years of professional baseball. I grew up in this community, and what I currently do is I'm the director of operations for the 12 Baseball Academy, which is it's a club much like club volleyball, club soccer. It's a baseball club. When I finished playing, I felt like I was going to get into college coaching, but as I was finishing up my undergrad and my master's in sport management here at A&M, kind of started this program, our baseball program, with the idea of addressing some of the problems that we're going to get into as we move along here, but addressing some of those problems here in this community. And I do everything from putting our rosters together. We currently have 18 teams, ages 9 years old all the way up to 18 years old. I'm in charge of scheduling, putting the teams together, setting our coaching philosophies, our everything in place from top to bottom. That's what I do.
Okay. You guys, so you can understand what the panel makeup is. Peter is from a operational standpoint, a managerial standpoint, from a city, so a government entity, and how he's going to come from that framework. Kimmy is obviously a parent of youth sport athletes and children. And what she didn't say is she has 9 children, so she's going to have quite a perspective on that. Mike comes from the background of actually running a youth triathlon, right? Yes. And also has run Camp Aggieland, so he has promoted physical activity for quite a long time. And then Kevin is coming from the perspective of individuals who actually run these large-scale clubs and club sports. Ferguson estimated that approximately 40 million children are involved in competitive sports. Children in today's era find themselves with a variety of competitive sports to choose from at earlier and earlier ages. The AAU, boys and girls basketball, baseball, softball, etc. start as early as 9 years old, while Little League baseball, softball can start as early as 5 with T-ball. And most of you, I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you played T-ball or soccer at 5? So you guys all understand that. The American Youth Soccer Organization has kids competing as early as the age of 4. And I'll start with Mike and just ask, is it a good thing, do you think, for children to participate in sports and physical activity programs? And if so or if not, what type of benefits do they realize from these participation activities?
Obviously, as someone who's involved in physical activity and promoting lifetime physical activity, I think it is really important that our kids are involved in youth sports or some type of physical activity. And that was, I guess, one of the reasons why we started the youth triathlon, the Aggieland Kids Triathlon here in town. We had the first one last year because we noticed that there was a need for kids that weren't involved in some of the organized youth sports, that didn't want to participate in youth sports, to have another option available to them. So that was one of the driving factors behind the Aggieland Kids Triathlon. Also in the camps that I've seen, I see a lot of kids that aren't involved in youth sports for a lot of different reasons, but they still need to be active. So it's really, and maybe it's outside of those 3 or 4 big sports, the football, the baseball, the basketball, the soccer. Okay, they maybe don't want to do that, but we try to expose them to other activities. There's other things that you can participate in outside of those sports. You don't have to be involved in those things. There's lots of things to do. So it's critical to their development. I look and see the kids that we've had, it helps them develop resilience. Okay, it's a safe place for them to learn to be a little bit tougher, okay, to learn some teamwork, to learn where they fit in, what their roles are, to develop those social skills. But I mean, ultimately it's fun for them, right? It's a fun place for them to go. And the kids don't realize that they're learning these other things. They're having fun, but they're not realizing that they're learning, discipline and resilience and learning to share with other people and those kind of things. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and where I think it's really important that our kids are involved in youth sports or physical activity.
Okay. Kimmy, would you, from a parental perspective, do you think did it benefit your children?
My children love participating in sports. It gives them something to do that's positive. They also have students that they can interact with on a regular basis outside of our local community. So for them, it's a great way for them to get out and meet people, develop spirituality, because we do a lot of spiritual things outside of 12 Academy. So I think that's one of the greatest things that we could have done that's positive for them.
Okay. Peter, what do you think? What is the stance of the City of College Station on the benefits of youth sports? Obviously, I don't know how many programs you guys run. Maybe you can tell them, and why do we do that as a city?
Well, we offer a variety of youth sports programs, swimming, flag football, basketball, we were offering softball. Now we're coordinating with somebody for softball. We coordinate for baseball. We coordinate for soccer. We feel it's very important that the kids have an opportunity to participate in both organized sports and individual activities that are physically active, because it does help the child or the participant develop some of those social skills that they need, interacting with others, working somewhat to learn how to settle their own issues and working with their teammates. They also get a chance to develop their own personality, their own self-esteem through success and encouragement. And it gives them an alternative place to be other than either in an empty house or on the streets, somewhere they could possibly be getting into trouble. So from all of those standpoints, we feel that it's very important that we continue to provide these activities.
Okay. And Kevin, what are you guys doing in the 12 Baseball Academy? What kind of benefits does a child get from participating with you guys?
Well, I'm going to add on to what Mike was saying. Probably the number one thing that I see in our program, keeping in mind that everything that we do is geared towards long-term development. For example, we have a 10-year-old team, and we're going to go play a tournament this weekend. And we hope that we do well. We hope that we win, but we're looking for opportunities to address things that will help them further down the road, whether on the field or off the field. Probably the number one thing is whether it's baseball, softball, soccer, whatever, sports, it provides a safe environment for kids to learn how to handle failure. And especially in baseball, if you consider a successful hitter who's failing most of the time, that's something that a kid has to learn to deal with, and that's real life, and that to me is the number one benefit.
Okay, and then I guess what I'd like to focus a little bit on specifically, and we'll just stay with you for now, Kevin. What are you doing that's helping promote physical activity amongst the young men that play in the baseball academy? And we'll just go down the line. You can switch the microphone if you don't mind. I mean, what are some things that are actually helping them, whether it be running, drills, whatever?
Well, obviously, playing any sport, there's a physical nature inherent to the sport and participating. Some of the things we do outside of our practices and our games, we have what we call our off-season speed and agility programs, where we give them an option to do something extra, to keep them involved, to keep them from getting in a situation where they have nothing to do, which if they have nothing to do, there's a chance they're going to choose to do something to get themselves in trouble. So we give them something else to do.
Okay.
I think from my perspective with the youth triathlon, the kids triathlon, it's providing an activity that pretty much everybody can do. You don't have to have a structured program. We can get families involved. And I think one of the neat things that we've seen come out of the last year's triathlon is actually now there's been a group of people that have actually started a triathlon training club for kids here in town. So that's a great thing. It provides another opportunity for kids that maybe aren't involved in youth sports, or maybe they're more into the individual sports. So it gives them an opportunity to do stuff. And then I also do some work with the 12 girls. We do some conditioning stuff with them. And I've actually worked with some homeschool kids in our community, and that's really an area that I've found where a lot of those kids have really missed out on any type of athletic development. And so I work with some kind of teenage 13, 14-year-old boys that have really missed out on physical activity growing up, and you can see with these guys that they've really missed out on a lot of opportunities. And so I spend a lot of time with them teaching them how to throw and catch at 13 and 14 years old, how to dribble a basketball, how to do those things. So we're doing that, and you can see how once they get that stuff, it really builds some confidence into their lives.
I guess I would say one of the most positive things that being involved with this physical activity has been is the self-confidence that my children now have. One of my daughters that's really good was usually quiet. She was one of the more quiet children, but because she's becoming active in 12 Academy, she is more outgoing, she's positive, she encourages other kids in our neighborhood to get involved and exercise, and just looking at it from a perspective of being in high school where we see a lot of obesity, it's just good to have someone that's going to encourage someone else to get out and be active. So I think just the self-esteem and the positive development that she has.
What we try and do is offer a variety of activities so that the kids have a chance to try multiple things, multiple sports, with the intent that, they get the basics from us and from some of our programs, and hopefully start to develop an appreciation or a love for one or two of the activities that they will continue to do both as a youth but also into adulthood, so that they can carry that forward, so that we can try and foster a lifelong activity level for them.
Okay, Peter, we'll just stay with you, and since it's a pretty easy segue, I think, for this one, but since we talked about the positive, can you tell us a little bit about the negative maybe that you've had to deal with as a city manager and leader, as far as what's going on in youth sports, and then specifically beyond that, try to talk about some of the things that people may have abused or whatever done as far as physical activity and children is concerned?
I think one of the biggest negatives that we see are expectations. Every child develops at a different rate, and they will become proficient at something at a different rate, but when either they expect themselves to perform as well as their best friend, or their parents expect them to perform as well as their best friend, and they don't, then you get discouragement and you get feelings of inadequacy. I can't do it. I'm no good, and then they start to give up. And so realistically trying to overcome that so that they will stick with it. I was a competitive swimmer, but I didn't hit my stride for years. But, I just kept doing it because I enjoyed the water. So keeping the kids involved and not letting them get discouraged because they don't develop as fast and they don't see the progression as fast as others, I think is the biggest thing. The biggest negative is they lose confidence.
Okay.
I think we've all been at a game that's competitive at one point or another, and as a spectator, you don't like to see the parents that embarrass the students or embarrass the players. Oh my gosh, that's a big problem, and it not only hurts other parents that are around that have to hear it, but it also hurts the children that hear it. So whether you're a spectator or a parent, that's one of the worst things that you can do is embarrass the children. And you just have to try to find something positive to make everybody feel good. Whether they're winning or whether they're losing, you can always come out saying something to make that child feel good about themselves, even though they may not be the best player.
Along with what Peter and Kimmy said, I agree with what they said, but a lot of times I think we try to fit our kids into an adult sport model, and we forget that they're kids, and we forget that they just want to play and they want to have fun. And so that's where I see a lot of the kids that I've had at Camp Aggieland, they've been kids that hadn't had success early in their life in sports, and so they've dropped out because they feel bad about themselves, and they come in and say, I'm no good, I can't do this. And so we have to spend the 2 weeks at Camp Aggieland actually showing them that, yes, you can do this stuff. It's not that difficult to do if you just stick with it and practice and do those things. So it's kind of, how do we fit these, how do we remember that they're kids and they want to have fun, and we kind of, sometimes the adults just get in the way. And that's really the biggest thing that I see, and one of the biggest negatives.
I think that the problems that we're talking about here, they show up when it's not done right. When it's done right, I think we can address some of these problems. And in our program, we specifically try to address a couple of major issues. And really, it's the too much too soon. And that can be physically, and that can be emotionally, that can be time commitments. I have friends with kids, and I watch them go. They'll play competitive soccer, club volleyball, club softball, and they're out 5 nights a week. And I wonder where is family time in there? So is it too much emotionally? Is it too much of a time commitment? And then just the physical side of it. For example, with us, we consider every weekend. We consider pitch counts. For example, we'll go play a tournament, and I'll watch a 10-year-old on another team, and in 2 days he'll throw 200 pitches. And, it's not that hard to figure out what's going to happen to him in 3 years. His arm's going to fall off. It's not going to work anymore. But not to mention, hey, he's 10 years old. He's played 200 games. He's going to be tired. And the facts, I'm not sure exactly what the stats are. It's something, and this is specific to baseball. It's probably similar in other sports, but around age 13 or 14, 75% or so of the kids stop playing. And I think it's because they've done too much too soon.
Okay, a topic that's somewhat related to this is specifically to talent development in young athletes is this notion of specialization. And Kevin just said, too much too soon. But early specialization, also year-round training in one particular sport. And basically, over the last 2 decades, there's become this notion of you pick very early on that my child is going to be a soccer player, and so you start putting him or her into a circumstance where they play soccer and train for soccer year-round. So with that stated, we'll start with Kevin since you have the microphone. What are your thoughts on sports specialization, which is children focusing on one sport and activity at an early age? When should they specialize and focus on that sport? And are there benefits to focusing on one sport or physical activity?
I'm going to start with the when. I'm not sure we can set an exact age or grade level, or at what point does a kid need to specialize. I think the question you have to ask first is it too much? Are we doing too much to where I don't have family time? I'm not able to socially develop. I can't handle my schoolwork. If you're not able to do all those things, it's probably too much. And whenever that comes up, that's when you probably need to start looking at specializing. Now, I will say this, for me, I'm kind of old school. I feel like an athlete needs to do as many things as possible, as long as possible. And even from the perspective of if I'm a parent who I'm certain that my kid's going to be a college baseball player, then I need to understand that if I go look at the roster here at A&M and I read those bios, most of those kids played multiple sports even in high school. So to be just a baseball player at that level requires a tremendous amount of athleticism. And so if I'm coming from that perspective, I need to understand, and I want people to understand, and we try to do things to help our parents understand, yeah, we're a baseball program, but if you want to be a baseball player, it's going to benefit you as an athlete to do as much as you can. So we set our program up. It's an annual, our membership runs for a full year, but we try to set it up where, especially in the fall, we give our kids a chance to do other things, and in fact, we encourage it, and we try to work our schedules around soccer and flag football and other things.
Just same as what Kevin said, we need to, I think we need to stay in as many sports opportunities or physical activity opportunities as long as possible. If you look at the research that's out there, they'll suggest maybe 14, 15 years old that athlete, that young person starts to maybe specialize or maybe get down to one or two sports, but still continue to train in multiple different ways. You look at the really good programs, and even in their off seasons, they're not. If it's basketball, they're not doing basketball, right? They're doing something else. Or it's volleyball, they're not doing volleyball. Just to change things up so your body can rest and recover from that sport, and maybe train in a different way. So, I think if you can train as long as possible in multiple sports, that's really important. Some other research that I've come across, they actually measured kids that specialized early and kids that were in multi-sports. And at maybe 16, 17, the specialized kid was maybe a little bit ahead, but really by 17, 18, that multi-sport athlete has caught up and surpassed the one that was specialized early in their life. And some other research you look at shows you that really if you specialize in one sport, you've got about 10 years in that sport. And after about 10 years, you're done. So, if you reflect on, if you specialized earlier, there was a sport that you played more than any other one, think about how long you played that sport. And I look at my life and I go, I started playing soccer when I was 4, 5. It was probably my best sport, but after about 16, I wasn't enjoying it as much. And basketball started later, and that was one that I enjoyed and carried out. So I think, if you're specializing with your child at 5 or 6, you got to know that by 14 or 15, they're going to be done. And they might be fantastic, but emotionally and psychologically, they're going to be done.
Okay. My oldest is 27. My youngest is 9. We started out, we started out with soccer. My husband, we had 4 of our girls that were on the same soccer team. They went on to play volleyball, basketball. By their sophomore year, they were burnt out. Now I have another set of girls. There's 3 left. Thanks to Dr. Bennett, they are now with 12 Academy, and they've been introduced to this sport we call soccer. We don't see many of us in soccer. He's telling me that she's going to be good in soccer. So I say, how can you specialize in something that you don't have experience in? So you give each child an opportunity to play them all, and maybe by high school, they'll specialize and they'll say, hey, I want to do this more or I want to do that more. But I was one of the last ones in high school that got to play volleyball, basketball, and I actually played baseball too. And I just developed into all of those sports. But I want my children to also have that opportunity. I don't want somebody telling them at the age of 5, hey, we're going to stick with basketball. And that's all you're going to do, because they're going to be tired by the time they get to high school. So I say give them this opportunity to do it all, and it will just naturally progress.
I really have to agree with a lot of what's been said. specialization in youth steals opportunities from them, because every sport and every activity will build a different set of physical and mental skills. And the chance to build those skill sets when they're young are vital. When should a child start specializing in a sport? I honestly believe it's when the child comes to you and says, I want to do whatever. Basketball, soccer, baseball, swimming, whatever. But they still need to be encouraged to keep up with some of those other sports, if for no other reason than to avoid the burnout that you see. I see wonderful softball players, but they start specializing at 6. They're done before they get to college. They don't even want to talk about a college scholarship because they're done. But everything they've been pointed to says you're going to specialize in softball. That's going to pay for college, and that's going to do all these things for you. And they end up hating the game. And so keeping it a broad opportunity gives them a chance to continue to do those things they love and not necessarily lose the love for it.
Thank you. We'll start with Kimmy on this one. And Kimmy, if you don't mind, after you're done, let Peter go.
Okay.
What role do you think adults should play in youth sports and not just what their role should be in youth sports, but what should the role of the parent or the adult be in regard to the physical activity that their children are getting from sports?
I think that as a parent, my job, first and foremost, is to ensure that when I place my child in the care of a coach, that coach is one who's spiritual, that coach is one who's a good role model, that coach is going to do what's best for not only my child at the time, but for all of the girls and or boys that are involved in the sport. So I think I placed first and foremost the who am I entrusting my child to, because as we all know, there are a lot of people that don't have our children's best interest at heart. So from a parental standpoint, you have to know that you can trust that coach and that they are good role models, because our kids are going to try to mimic whoever their coaches are. So make sure that you have a positive role model.
Be careful, Peter. What's the role of the adult in this game?
Honestly, the role of the adult, and I'm going to kind of get into the next question too, because I don't really care if it's the parent or the coach. Their role is to be encouraging, supportive, build the participant, build the child. Be honest with them, obviously, but build them up. Don't provide a bad example, but be someone they can look up to. Be someone they can trust. Be someone that is encouraging them in the development of the particular sport and in the child as a whole. Kimmy talked about, someone who is spiritual. Everything we do around a participant, as a parent, as a coach, as a sponsor, whatever, the child will see and will emulate. And so it's the responsibility. Parents are the first teachers of the child, and therefore it's their responsibility to provide that good example.
Whether it's parents or coaches, just like Peter said, they need to be encouragers. I think as coaches of children, they also need to understand their kids. My oldest son is in middle school, and so it's my first middle school coach experience. And my son is a late mature, and so I see, the problem I see is that these coaches, they pick their most athletic kids that are 12 years old and 13 years old because they want to win in 7th grade. Right? That coach's life depends on that 7th grader winning a game. And I go, so you've gotten rid of all the early matures who in 4 years are going to be, my son will be 6'4", probably about 220, 225. He's going to hate athletics because at 12 years old, his coach wanted the best athlete. And that really bothers me, and that's why I coach my kids, is because I see so many coaches, parents, all they care about is winning. At 5 years old, at 6 years old, all the way up. All that matters is winning. And that's a problem, and that's why I coach my kids and I help out with all these other things that I'm involved in, because winning isn't the most important thing for those kids.
To answer the question about parents and what their role should be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take what Kimmy had to say, and I'm going to ask Kimmy to come say that at my next organizational meeting, because what I think the parent, I'm going to speak as a coach from the perspective of a coach. Once the parent has done what Kimmy said, is I understand who the coach is, what his background is, I can trust him with my kid, then in my opinion, the role of the parent should be drop your kid off and go away. Which, if you trust the coach, that shouldn't be a problem. But unfortunately, that rarely happens. Miss Kimmy here is rare in what she has to say.
Also, Kevin, if you'll follow up a little bit, a couple of weeks ago, we had a speaker come in and talk to different seminars that we had, and you were at the Friday night event where he said the main role of the parent is just to let your child go. You want to expound upon anything Rob said, or
what was being said? And Rob Miller is the guy, and he went through a list of things and said, look, what you need to be doing as a parent is you need to release your kid to the coach. You need to release your kid to the game and everything that the game's going to provide for him or her. So he just ran down this list. If you're doing this, you haven't released your kid. If you're not doing this, you haven't released your kid. And I sat there even as a parent and thought, man, I'm trying to check myself and make sure, okay, have I done this? Have I done this? Because I spend a lot of my time dealing with the parents in our organization. And keep in mind, the parents of our organization are typically those who want to do a little bit more and want a little more advanced experience, want a little more coaching, want to play a little bit more. So a lot of those parents are the ones who have higher expectations. And so I spend a lot of my time dealing with these issues with them, and I'm trying to tell them this is how you need to think. But then I need to check myself and make sure that I'm releasing my kids to the game and to the coaches and allowing those processes to take place.
I think it's also important that they know that this particular community is a little unusual, and unusual in both good and bad ways. But one of the ways that it is unusual is that if I take, for example, the parent group that Kimmy is involved with, that's a very good parent group, and they've released those kids pretty quickly to the coach who actually handles them and works with them. And I'd say the same thing's probably true for Kevin's group as well. I don't know, Peter, how you view it as compared to maybe even the Bryan groups and certainly the larger cities, and maybe it's different that way. I'm not sure. I'll start now with I think Peter. And what I want to ask now is, what do you think the role of those that actually oversee or manage youth programs would be? And from your perspective, what's your responsibility for these programs? And then I'd like to see if there's any difference for what you guys think Peter's groups of folks ought to be doing as compared to what Peter thinks.
Well, realistically, our role, I'll start with the direct service provision where we actually host the programs. Our role is to organize the activities and find coaches and find facilities where we can help the participants start to learn the basics of the program. I'm going to tell you, our programs don't go as far as Kevin and the 12s do with technique and skills and conditioning. We try and just get the participants into the sport, get them to experience the sport, and hopefully get them to a point where they want to learn more about the sport or find some sports that they truly enjoy and want to continue. We're there trying to develop a group that is going to develop a lifelong activity, something you can do not just for one season or 1 year, but throughout the rest of their life, to keep them active, to keep them involved, so that they'll bring their children into these programs and have those good experiences and positive experiences as well. With the groups that we work with or we facilitate for, we try and help them find places where they can do, hopefully, many of those same things, and maybe even take the child to that next level of skills and activity or ability as they move forward.
Okay. Anybody want to respond to that? I know y'all, every one of you think that Peter's doing a great job and everything. But besides the City of College Station, what do you think the role of those that manage these programs should be?
And I think the City of College Station does a good job. I've had my kids have been involved in the youth basketball leagues, and they're well run and well organized. One of the other aspects, and then we play youth soccer, which they help facilitate. But one of the deals with youth soccer or any of those other ones that aren't run by an organization or direct group, it's really a volunteer-based organization. And so, the board, they're putting in a lot of hours. They're volunteering their time. There's a lot of turnover on those boards, and so that creates a lack of continuity. And so, if you're participating in a program over a course of years, there could be a lot of differences based on who's leading that group that year. And so that's where I see, the City of College Station running a league is much better organized because those people are there all the time. There's more continuity to what they're doing rather than, for example, we'll say a College Station youth soccer program.
Okay, we've got about 10, 12 minutes left, so we're going to, instead of going through the regular questions we have left, we're going to open it up. You guys that have been listening, paying attention, can ask questions right now. So question number one, who's it going to be? And if you don't mind, when you raise your hand, say who you are, and then address whom you want to. Yes?
I am Gregg. I just had a question. You guys talk a lot about College Station. Is there anything in particular that you think Brian could do? I know College Station obviously has a lot more money, so that matters. But is there anything that Brian can do specifically with limited budget, targeted-wise, that you guys think specifically?
Yeah, Peter.
You're the guy.
Sorry.
Well, we in College Station, we do have a little bit more budgetary freedom. Brian, for many years, and this goes way back beyond the current administration, within the Bryan City or within the Parks and Recreation Department, they focused on being a facilitator organization. They built facilities and then turned them over to other organizations or just allowed other organizations to facilitate. They have started making changes, and they're making changes in a very positive direction. They have I can't remember the exact name of it, and Ashley's probably going to kill me for this, but they have a Pee Wee sports program where you put the kids in a camp and they experience a week, 2 weeks of different sports. But it's for 3, 4, 5-year-olds to start there. So I think what Brian's doing is very good for where they are right now.
Tyler McPherson. I was wondering, in regards to specialization, what do you guys make of high school coaches that they don't make it mandatory to play one sport, but pretty much just say...
They make it hard for you to play another one. Anybody want to... Well, I don't want to... I'll try to answer that a little bit. Is that okay?
Sure.
I think in this particular state, the one that could be picked on is football. And I know that at Consol currently it's kind of a difficult thing if you play football, that they want you in football in spring. They want you doing spring training and lifting and conditioning and doing all those other things. And I'm sure Dr. Kreider could speak to that as well. But some of those young men also play baseball, or they'll run track or whatever else it is. But in this state it's obviously one of those things where football is kind of a huge deal. And so that's a tough thing. I think at that point, and what I didn't want to add to what they said on specialization, but the literature that is out there says that children ought to have a diverse experience up to about age 12 or 13. And of course you can, the standard deviation can be a little bit either way. But by the time they're about 15 or 16, if they're going to be a young person that's going to go on and play in college or one of those other things, that's when they really should be focused on, and I'm not going to say one sport, I would rather fight it and say 2. So my response to that would be, I would say that high school coaches are just like, I would be probably the same way if I was the football coach at Consol. I would want the best athletes that are walking around that school, and I would want them dedicated 100% to football. Now, I will tell you as a former college coach, and this is, I would say that if you ask the baseball staff here, they'd say the same thing. When we were recruiting guys, and if there was a comparison between two, let's say, shortstops, and one of them was a high school quarterback and the other one only played baseball all the time, we were going with a high school quarterback just because he had a varied experience, and also, in all honesty, because football says a lot about the character of a guy and the physicality and all those things. So we would have chosen that young man over the other one in the recruiting process. So I think it benefits to try to play two. And I'm curious, how many of you guys just did one sport in high school? How many were just one? Okay, how many were more than one? Okay, so look around. And I would also say to you, it's probably, I don't think it's as rare anymore, but it might be tough to find even the guys on A&M's football team that only played football. My guess is they also ran track probably, or played basketball, maybe some in baseball as well. I don't know that. It'd be an interesting thing to see. I know the baseball guys, my guess is almost all of them were football guys too.
Can I add something?
Yes.
As a former coach who worked with AAU basketball, had a number of girls make it to college and those things like you got to do as well. The best athletes we had were multi-sports athletes, without a doubt. There's one girl that played softball for Texas, and she played 7 sports. It's amazing how many sports, but she was a true athlete. Whereas now my own kids, my daughter, when she got to 9th grade, well, you have to be a basketball player. Well, that interferes with volleyball. You can do both, or the crossover. And I think that hurt her athletic development because she had to be one sport basically.
Season expansion.
I know my son was a pretty good golfer. But once he got to high school and football, it's like, well, you can't do both. You have to choose. And I think it's really important because if you want to make an athlete, they need to play and have lots of time.
That's right.
And it's really, that's sad that happens, but it does, you guys all experience it. Most of you are from Texas, you understand that. I'll also say there's getting ready to be a brand new high school in College Station, and my son will be a 9th grader at that school. And one of the great things about that school for us as a family is he's not going to really have a choice, nor are his coaches, because they're only going to have 9th graders and 10th graders. So he's going to have to play football, basketball, and baseball. He's going to have to, because they're going to have to field teams, and the only way they're going to field teams is to have those 2 classes to do it. So it's actually a great thing for us that they're going to be JV only in football and those types of things. So he's going to be able to maintain at least for 2 years, all 3 sports probably. And then, obviously, then it becomes an easy answer. Should they be doing 3? Because I think that then now you're going, okay, I don't know if that's possible anymore the way we go. Okay.
I'm Cody Harris. Nice to meet all of y'all. I know y'all have really been talking about trying to encourage all of these